And what if time didn't just take the days, but also the words that got stuck in your throat, the hugs that never happened, the dreams that fell asleep too soon? After 50, there's a kind of silence no one talks about. It's not in the words, it's in the long stares out the window. In that pause before answering, I'm fine. In the weight the body feels, but that the soul has known for years. It's the silence of what was never lived. Slowly, it starts to take up space. First in your memory, then in your chest. And one day you realize it's not sadness, it's absence. Absence of yourself, of what you wished you had done, of what you wanted to say, of what you still want, but don't even know how to want anymore. Many people say it's too late now, that now it's about acceptance, that life has already moved on. But I need to tell you something, as carefully as I can. That's not true. Time doesn't erase what you still feel. It only tries to convince you to stay silent. But there's something time can't erase, the desire to live truthfully. Yes, it might fall asleep. It might hide behind the routine, the tiredness, the aches of the body, but it's still there. And you know it. Because deep down, every time you think, I could have done it differently, it's life saying it's still possible. It's still possible to change direction, still possible to say what was never said, still possible to return to yourself, even if slowly, even if it hurts, even if no one understands. This video is an invitation, not to reopen wounds, but to create space. Space to honestly see what's hurting, space to choose differently, and above all, space to not repeat. Today, we're going to touch on regrets that hurt, but not to make you suffer. We'll approach them with respect, with truth, and with the courage of those who know only what is looked at with love can truly be healed. And you deserve that. You deserve finally to live lightly what has been heavy for so long. There's a kind of pain that doesn't make noise. It doesn't knock on the door. It doesn't draw attention with tears. But it's there, living in the corners of the house, between one thought and another, between sleepless nights. It's silent regret. Not the scandal of a mistake, but the subtle discomfort of remembering what was never lived. That trip you postponed and never took. That conversation that fell asleep and never found its place again. That dream that was slowly forgotten because of others. Out of fear, out of lack of courage, or because you believed that one day there'd be time. But time passed, and what wasn't lived remained. Not as a memory, but as a void. This kind of regret isn't something you talk about. You keep it. Out of shame, out of exhaustion, out of not knowing how to speak about it. And so, without a witness, it grows. It grows inside a chest that has already carried too much. That's why the worst regrets are the ones we tell no one. They accompany us silently, like a shadow that doesn't disappear, even when the light is on. And we try to convince ourselves, it's over. It couldn't have been different. It's too late. But none of those phrases bring peace. They only bring a kind of resignation that doesn't free, it only postpones. Because there's a very common trap after 50, believing that now it's just about accepting what life has become, accepting the little you have, accepting the lack of choice. But acceptance is not abandonment. True acceptance would be to look with compassion at what hurt, and still move forward with presence, with awareness, with choice. And here is the key. Regret, when looked at truthfully, can stop being a sentence and become a compass. If it hurts so much not to have lived something, maybe that's exactly where life still exists. Maybe not like before, maybe not in the same way, but still possible. Regret can point to what was true in you and was left behind. It can remind you of what you still desire, of what you can still reclaim. Because what hurts the most is not the time that passed. It's the idea that it took everything away. And that is not true. There is a space between what was and what could still be. And that space is called now. There's a pain that comes disguised as care, as generosity, as I'm here for you. It's the pain of having been everything for everyone, and almost nothing for yourself. For many years, maybe decades, you learned to give, to be the family's support, the reliable presence, the strong shoulder. You were that person who held everything together when it all fell apart, who cared, protected, provided, even when no one asked if you also needed care. And little by little, without realizing, you faded away. You kept saying yes when your heart was asking for no. You stayed silent to avoid conflict, to not lose, to not hurt. You swallowed your desires, postponed your dreams, pushed your own existence to the back of the line. Life kept happening, but without you at the center of it. This self-abandonment is treacherous. It comes dressed up as kindness, responsibility, love. But deep down, it's just the repetition of a silent belief that your value lies in being useful, being accepted, not causing trouble. And when you live like this for a long time, there comes a point where you don't even know who you are without others. But there's always a moment when the body signals, when the silence starts to weigh, when the soul whispers, "And me, where did I go in this whole story?" Maybe you're at that moment now. Maybe you've already realized that what they called strength was just your effort not to fall apart. And yes, that hurts. It hurts to realize how much you stopped living by always putting yourself second. It hurts to look back and see that while you were busy saving others, you lost yourself. But that pain can also be the first sign of return. There are questions that can open this path of reconnection. They aren't ready-made answers. They're invitations to remember. At what point in my life did I stop choosing myself? What part of me did I let fall asleep to fit into others' expectations? If I weren't afraid of disappointing, what would I have done differently? These questions aren't easy, but they carry a quiet power to bring you back. And maybe, this week, one symbolic gesture is enough. A gesture just for you. A small choice, but yours. A wish respected. A desire heard. A step towards your own presence. Because when you start listening to yourself again, the world also starts to listen to you differently. And for the first time in a long time, you might feel, I also deserve to choose myself. There are words that age inside us, words that wanted to become gestures, hugs, liberation, but were swallowed out of fear, out of shame, out of that feeling that now was not the right time. And so, the moment never came. With time, what wasn't said begins to weigh, not like a scream, but like an absence. The absence of an I love you that never came out, of an I'm sorry kept for too long, of a goodbye that remained suspended in the air. It's these swallowed words that create gaps in our bonds. Empty spaces between people who loved each other but couldn't find each other at the right time. And this silence keeps accumulating. Sometimes it turns into resentment. Sometimes regret. Sometimes longing for a presence that still exists but no longer knows how to come close. But maturity, when well lived, has a power that youth never had. The power to speak with truth. We learn that we no longer need to defeat the other, that it's not about being right, but about finding meaning, that it's not about changing the past, but about easing the present. Clarissa Pinkola Estes speaks of the strength of mature femininity, the one that doesn't shout, but speaks, that doesn't hurt, but reveals, that no longer silences what has always hurt. And you can access that strength now, not to fix what was, but to heal what still lives in silence. Maybe that happens through words, or maybe just through the gesture of writing. Write for yourself, for someone, for that love, for that father, that daughter, that friend who drifted away. Even if the letter is never sent, write. Because sometimes the most important thing is not to be heard. It's to allow yourself to speak. And what if what you need to say is not for the other, but for yourself? Because there are words that don't need an audience. They just need courage. There's a time when we believe everything can wait. Wait for the kids to grow up. Wait for life to calm down. Wait to save more money. Wait to feel brave. Wait for someone to go along. But later is a treacherous place. It always seems more comfortable than now. Safer, less risky. But later never arrives the way we imagine. It keeps stretching out, drifting away, dissolving into promises no one keeps. And when we realize it, today has become the past. And the dreams have become memories of what almost was. Maybe you've felt that when remembering something you deeply wanted, a career you never pursued, a place you wanted to visit, a talent kept in boxes, a project postponed so many times that it no longer seems to make sense. But what if it still does? Because dreams change. They are not static. What you wanted at 30 may no longer fit now, but there may still be a possible version, adapted, more mature, more yours. It's not too late, it's just different. Think of an extinguished candle. Even without a flame, there's still warmth. The wick may seem asleep, but with the right breath, a touch of care, the flame is reborn. Your dream can be like that too. Sometimes it's just waiting for a concrete gesture, a step that brings it back to life. It doesn't matter if it's small. What matters is that it's real. Turn that old desire into something that fits into your week. A gesture, a bit of research, a beginning, something that makes you feel in motion again. Because time doesn't come back. But what you do with it can still change everything. And there's a serene joy that only those who start over after 50 understand. The joy of no longer needing to prove anything to anyone, of living what matters, for yourself. This is the now your later has been waiting for. Routine protects, but it also hides. It hides the emptiness of repetitions. It hides the silence of days that pass the same. It hides the feeling that life is moving without you in it. Living on autopilot is different from living with presence. On autopilot, everything becomes an obligation. The body gets up, makes coffee, replies to messages, works, tidies up, goes to bed, and repeats, without pause, without reason, without truth. And maybe this way of living protected you for a while, protected you from pain, from loss, from the confusion that is stopping and asking, is this really what I want? But there comes a time when the body can't pretend anymore. It gets tired. It hurts for no reason. It forgets too much. It feels too much. And the soul, quietly, starts asking for space. Autopilot leaves traces. They show up as irritation without cause, as tears that appear in unexpected moments, as a sadness you can't name, or as that question that visits you before you sleep. Was this what I dreamed for myself? Maybe you don't even know how to answer anymore. And that's okay, because what paralyzes is not the absence of answers. It's the fear of asking the questions. And here's a possible, small but transformative gesture. Choose a day, just one day a month, when you don't obey the routine, when you say no to autopilot and yes to the unpredictable. It could be a new route to the shops, a book instead of the TV, a solo lunch at your usual place, a dance for no reason, a longer look in the mirror, and what if? And what if you're still in time to feel something new? And what if the time you have left is exactly the right time to live with more meaning? And what if there's still life beyond the calendar? Sometimes a small detour changes the entire landscape. Time doesn't come back, but courage can bloom at any moment. Even among repetitions, the soul knows where desire lives. And desire is always a call to return, to living. Love is a road we didn't always have the courage to follow. Many times it appeared, but we were too distracted, too wounded, too proud, or simply afraid. Afraid of suffering, of losing, of giving ourselves and not being seen. And so, we protected ourselves. But by protecting ourselves, we also distanced ourselves from the chance to live something true. Some loved too much those who didn't know how to give it back, who gave themselves hoping to be chosen, but ended up being left behind. And there are also those who hid, thinking they didn't deserve it, not wanting to get hurt again, believing it was already too late. But time, although it doesn't return the chances that were lost, offers new ways to love. Maturity has a silent power, the ability to see love without the illusions of youth, without neediness, without haste, without the need for a perfect fit, with truth, with freedom, with presence. Now, you no longer need someone to complete you, because you know you are already whole, and that changes everything. This might be the best moment to love, because now you have more clarity, less expectation, more desire to live lightly, less fear of being who you are. And maybe this love doesn't come from outside. Maybe it starts within, in the affectionate gesture you delayed, in the courage to touch a memory with kindness, not with pain, in the embrace you never gave yourself. You can reclaim this emotional courage. You can look sweetly at that feeling that got stuck in the past. You can allow yourself to feel, even if, again, even if carefully, even if little by little, because there are those who have found self-love at 70, and it wasn't too late. It was the right time, the time when they could finally love themselves without masks, without haste, without needing to ask for permission. True love doesn't require youth. It requires presence. And you can still live that love with someone or with yourself. Because what heals the regret of not having loved is starting to love now. In a new way, in your way. Time, when it passes, usually leaves marks. Some become memories, others wounds, and some become burdens. But there's a kind of time that's still in your hands. The time of now. It is this time that can, little by little, change what remains. Because what you do today, even if it seems small, can begin to heal what wasn't done yesterday. It's not about erasing history, pretending it didn't hurt, or trying to make up for everything. It's about giving new meaning, about walking with the past, but without repeating the same emptiness. Regret, when looked at truthfully, doesn't have to be a place of guilt. It can be a bridge, a crossing, a reminder that it's still possible to choose differently. And choosing differently doesn't mean big upheavals. Many times it's just a gesture, a more attentive look, a respected silence, a yes said with courage, a no that liberates. Awareness lives in the details, and it's these details that prevent new voids in the future. It's not about living in a rush, trying to make up for lost time. It's about living awake, feeling, choosing, listening, being finally present. Because living present is the only way to no longer be absent from yourself. You don't need to deny what happened, what hurt, what was lost, was real. But what you do with it now is what determines what can still be lived. Some say that after 50 time speeds up, and maybe that's true. But what many don't realize is that it also gains value, because every gesture carries more weight. Every affection has more intention. Every decision holds more truth. And every regret can be the starting point of a new direction. You still have time. Time to feel what you didn't feel. Time to say what you never said. Time to listen to yourself like never before. Time to live fully what remains. Because what remains is still life. And life, when touched with awareness, is always the beginning of something worth living. Maybe, throughout this video, something hurt inside you. A forgotten name, a memory that resurfaced, a silence that started making noise again. That's not weakness. It's a sign that you still feel, and where there is still feeling, there is still light. Little by little, with respect and presence, you can transform those regrets into paths. They no longer have to be prisons. They can become compasses. Sincere alerts from the soul saying, now is the time. It's still possible. Because there's a difference between what has passed and what can still happen. And maybe what you need is not a big change, but just a gesture, a step, a beginning, something symbolic, but true, something that reconnects you with who you are and with who you can still be. Reflect with care. Which of these regrets still lives in you? And which small choice, no matter how minor it seems, can be made today so that it doesn't repeat tomorrow? Life after 50 is not a closing. It's a second win, and it doesn't come with haste. It comes with truth, with quiet courage, with a kind of love that no longer rushes, but also no longer abandons itself. If this video touched something important in you, share it with someone who might also be living that silence. Someone who needs to know there is still time. Leave in the comments. What small step are you going to take today for yourself? Because it's not about turning the page in a hurry. It's about writing, with awareness, the rest of the story. And you still have time. Time to restart with more presence. Time to look at yourself with more compassion. Time to finally live what has always been yours. And what fear, haste, or habit made you postpone. Now, don't postpone anymore. Now, choose yourself.